Hi, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Othot webinar, where you are going to get the very first look at our latest product innovation called sensitivity analysis. Before we get started, I just wanted to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. Apologize, sorry. If you look at the screen, you should see a screenshot of the attendee interface. Just so you know, if you are calling in or you're using you can call in, over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane, and the dial-in information will be displayed. The other thing I just wanted to mention, quick housekeeping, you have the opportunity to submit text questions using the questions pane in the control panel. You can send your questions in at any time, and we will address them at the end of the presentation during the Q&A. I just now quickly wanted to introduce our speakers. Dave Babst, he's the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Othot, and Bob DiMaggio, he's the Vice President of Product at Othot. Thank you all for being here today, and I'll turn it over to Dave to get started.
Thanks very much, Carly, and thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to actually learn a little bit more about what we're doing at Othot and with the new innovation that we came out with at the beginning of the year called sensitivity analysis. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Bob DiMaggio, who is actually going to take you into a demo environment and show you the functionality and provide some of the more technical explanations around what it is that we're offering to customers today with this particular functionality. We're very excited about it and have seen quite a bit of interest, I would say, in both existing customers and prospective customers around what we've developed over the course of the past 3 months. So just a quick review of an agenda. I'm going to actually start by going over just a little bit about Othot for those of you who are not as familiar with who we are and what we do and where we've come from. I also wanted to talk a little bit about why predictive analytics is really important in today's day and age and what implications that is having in higher education today. We're then sort of going to frame for you how we actually came about creating the new functionality in our platform around sensitivity analysis and take you into our demo environment and actually show it to you. We find that the show and tell piece is always probably the most impactful because the beauty of software is that you actually have the ability to see what it is that you'll buy or potentially use. So with that as just kind of a basic frame of how we're going to use the time, obviously, as Carly mentioned, we'll wrap up with questions as you actually have them. So please make note and feel free to provide questions to us as we go. So with that as sort of an introduction, I thought I'd start just a little bit with some information about who Othot is and sort of how we came to be. Othot has been around for what will be 4 years in March of 2018. And, while we are what I would consider to be an emerging sort of provider and player in the higher education space around predictive analytics, the genesis of our company was actually created 4 years ago out of a couple of things. Our 2 co-founders, Andy Hanna, our CEO, and John Abatico, our CTO, are lifelong friends and have both sort of formed sort of their professional careers around education, entrepreneurship, and technology. And the 2 of them got together about 4.5 years ago and thought it might be interesting if they actually built a business together. At the time, Andy had just started to work as an adjunct professor at the University of Pittsburgh and was actually getting quite involved in helping the university to shape some of the questions and really the answers that they wanted to create through analytics around sort of strategic direction at the institution. And one of the areas that he spent quite a bit of time in 4 years ago was actually with their enrollment management office and trying to help them understand how they might actually be able to use a lot of the data that they've been collecting around prospective students in a more intelligent way. And so about 4 years ago, we got involved in actually talking to Pitt's enrollment management office about how we could help them solve for this particular challenge. And over the course of about a 2-year period, we worked really closely with the university to do two things. One was to build predictive analytics models that actually could solve for some of the enrollment questions that they had in interacting with prospective high school students. And then secondarily, we worked very closely with them to actually build a user interface through which we could deliver insights and predictions, directly to colleges and universities through a software interface. Proud to say that in August of 2016, we were actually able to commercialize that work, and over the course of time have been able to take that to more colleges and universities across the country. But the genesis of Othot is really founded around three basic ideas. We wanted to identify questions that, in this particular case, higher education institutions are looking to solve through data. We wanted to deliver a solution through a cloud-based software, and we wanted to apply more advanced analytics techniques to those predictions so that we were offering a more intelligent solution. So fast forward to where we are today, and I'm really proud to say that, at the time that we actually commercialized our product, we had 2 customers. By the end of this month, we will have 27, and we've sort of created here a representative listing of many of the institutions that work with us today. And as you can see, they sort of cut across a wide range of type and sort of organizational mission. I'd say the commonality with many of the customers that we work with today is that they embrace this idea that they can use data to solve some of their challenges and are looking to find a partner that can help them in ways that are a little bit more evolved than what they've done to date. So next, I just wanted to offer a couple of perspectives on what has actually been happening with predictive analytics over the course of what I would consider to be more of like the past 5 or 6 years in particular. And so when you think about analytics, I actually, over 10 years ago, was an analytics manager. And, I spent an awful lot of my time with my team trying to solve questions through data. And we spent a lot of time answering questions around what actually happened. So in this particular slide, you can see sort of an evolution around the kinds of questions that we're able to solve through analytics. Over 10 years ago, I spent most all of my time answering the what happened and why did it happen questions. And, what I think has happened, particularly over the past 5 or 6 years, is that because of some of the key advancements that we've seen in technology and analytics, and just the preponderance of data that's now available, we now see more advanced analytics techniques that are answering future state questions, like what will happen and how can we make something happen. And these are more commonly known in the analytics field as predictive and prescriptive analytics. And fundamentally, Othot is playing in those future state question kind of fields. So why is there such a ripe opportunity for predictive and prescriptive analytics today? Well, I kind of touched upon this in some of my earlier comments. I think in some ways it kind of boils down to 3 key reasons. First and foremost is that there's just a sheer availability of rich data sources and data variables. I think I saw a statistic recently that we are producing as much data in one day as we did from 2003 to the beginning of time. So just to kind of factor that, it's very clear that the amount of data that's available and really the data and what it can tell about our behavior and what it is that we're going to do in a future state, it is, as I'd say as opportunistic as anything I've seen in the analytics field since I've been exposed to it over the past 20 years. And then the other 2 pieces sort of fall part and parcel with that. First and foremost, or secondarily, there's proven success through some more advanced analytics techniques. You may have heard, sort of language like machine learning and artificial intelligence. Fundamentally, machine learning is kind of an application of artificial intelligence, but it allows you to contemplate the impact that multiple variables will have on a decision and sort of the interplay that they have on that decision. I think traditionally and more conventionally, some of the predictive analytics techniques that have been utilized are more linear regression focused, and those tend to focus more on the one-to-one relationship that a variable has on an outcome. And then finally, and this is sort of where Othot fits, sort of as a byproduct of the availability of rich data sources, more proven analytics techniques, and the availability of those techniques is just the maturity of tools that are available in the marketplace. And those tools tend to have a technology bent to them. And that is a big, I think, piece of what Othot is doing that is a bit different in higher education today, is that we're offering these advancements through a software solution and through technology. So the next slide just sort of gets into what it is that we're offering that is a bit different when you actually dig into our product. And I think it boils down to three things. The first is that for any sort of high impact question that we're answering, like what is the likelihood that an individual will enroll at your institution, we're actually developing an individual likelihood score that is specific to that individual. Along with that, we're able to tell you information about that individual and why that individual will be likely to make a choice or not. Secondarily, we've developed some functionality in our platform that was sort of a precursor to the sensitivity analysis that allows for more simulation model sort of based functionality and allows you to play kind of a what if game around being able to change the outcome using really prescriptive analytics capabilities to do that. So doing something like, what if I actually were to give a certain amount of aid to a student, how would that actually change the likelihood score? Or what if I were to get that student on campus, how could that actually change their likelihood score? And then finally, and as critically, we've developed, I think, an architecture that allows for us to bring together multiple data sources so that we can understand the interplay that they have on a decision, and so that we can actually inject data into those decisions in more of a real-time basis. A lot of our customers today are providing us with data updates on a weekly and even a daily basis. So the scores actually change dynamically to reflect what's actually happening. And then along with that, the predictions that we're creating actually do change over time, meaning as the student moves and matriculates through the student life cycle, that likelihood score at the individual level will actually change to reflect what's happening and what implications some of their actions are having on that likelihood score. So that's a bit about predictive analytics and where Othot kind of plays in the predictive analytics world. Thought I'd offer just a couple of perspectives on what we see happening with predictive analytics in higher education today. First and foremost is that we're starting to see, I think, an emergence of solutions that are formulating around that student life cycle, as some would say, from cradle to grave. And you're seeing analytics be applied to sort of key decisions that are made by that particular student or the institution at key junctures like enrollment, retention, or persistence, personalized success post-graduation, and even alumni engagement. And the beautiful thing is that there's just a real richness in data that's available to inform some of the decisions around how you interact with a student during these key decision points and key life moments for the student. I think one of the challenges is that in this day and age is that there are multiple data sources and stakeholders and constituencies that sort of work in and around some of these key decision points, and oftentimes it can get in the way of being able to actually use data in a fairly sophisticated way to answer these questions in ways that maybe we haven't before. And one of the things that we're trying to do with our company is to formulate, the questions that we're answering around these key life moments for the student. So we started with enrollment, And over time, we're looking to help students and institutions, I should say, use data to engage students around their journey through persistence and graduation, finding a job, and then engaging with the institution as an alumnus. What predictive analytics and more sophisticated approaches towards analytics enables institutions to do when they so choose to is that it does allow you to get, I think, a little more specific about what it is you're looking to accomplish around some of these key life moments for the student. So this is just an example of where we've been able to sort of work with one of our customers around identifying some of the goals that they have in connection with these decisions. And, fundamentally, part of what we try and do is determine where we can help in discrete ways in actually moving the needle around these more outcome-based, metrics through the solutions that we create. So to this point, as I mentioned, Othot has been focused more on helping institutions with that enrollment question. When you think about application, I think where our customers have seen the most benefit from actually working with us kind of boils down to three key areas. I think we've been able to help in understanding who the right type of student is from a prospect perspective, i.e., which lakes have the most fish in them. We've then been able to sort of take that a level further into the life cycle to say, how should the institution be focusing their resources to engage these students and the higher likelihood or higher probability students along the way, i.e., which fishing holes will generate the best fish. And then I'd say even more discreetly, especially with the kind of development of the sensitivity analysis and functionality, we're able to, I think, more discreetly help institutions determine that right amount of financial aid to offer to actually try and lure in that fish and engage the student, as an actual enrolled student at the institution. So next I'm going to move and shift into talking more about the sensitivity analysis and the functionality that we've recently created. And I thought I'd just start first with providing a little bit of context around why we ended up going in this direction. And I just wanted to start first with what we see as being a fundamental challenge for a variety of institution types across the country. And that's, what we're calling this kind of arms race around discounting from a financial aid perspective. And, this is just a visualization that a very, sort of good partner to us, Kennedy and Company, had created in one of their white papers around how this actually works for a variety of institution types as an illustrative example. But what tends to happen is it's almost this game of who can actually discount the furthest to actually get students to, attend their school for a particular year. And, in many ways, this is being done through more generic strategies, through matrices that have been created and actually replicated across institutional type. So you tend to have institutions that on the prior slide are competing against one another with the same financial aid award matrices and the same strategies. And, fundamentally what that leads to is this race to the bottom with discount rates, sort of spiking and spiraling over time to levels that we haven't seen before over the past 10 years. And so, fundamentally, I think at Othot, we were trying to think about how we can actually help institutions to break this pattern. And in September, I had an opportunity to attend one of the many conferences that I'm sure some of you on the phone are in regular attendance at. And I had a chance to sit in on a panel discussion that involved one of the leading competitors in offering and creating financial aid award matrices. And I was just sort of struck by the challenge that exists and the generic advice that's being offered today. And one of the things that really stood out to me as I sat there was that I thought fundamentally we should be able to build a better mousetrap, right? we are creating individual likelihood scores that have much more dialed in on the key influencers that could change that score. Couldn't we arrive at a more personalized and customized approach towards understanding where aid could make the most difference at the individual level, and then, beyond that, could we not ladder that together to create, award matrices that are much more custom to the institution and the type of student that they've been dealing with over time? So I came back from that conference pretty, inspired by that idea. And then literally the next week, Bob and I were involved in a dialogue with a prospective customer who was looking to solve for this exact challenge. And so we actually figured out a way where we could help them, and we could do it by using some of the intelligence coming out of our platform in working with this prospective customer, and ultimately in converting them to a customer. We were able to also think about how could we actually turn this into a part of our product so that it is actually in the software. And so, in many ways, that served as the catalyst for the innovation that has recently come out in January. And, I think one of the things that we found, and then I'm going to turn things over to my colleague who's way smarter than me around all of these topics. I think one of the things that we found is that there is more application to the functionality than just financial aid. We think that there's actually application that could be extraordinarily valuable to institutions around financial aid, around recruitment and optimizing campus visits and their impact that they have on individual students, and then on marketing activities and really the way that students are engaged through that, the marketing tactics that are employed by institutions today. And so I'm going to turn things over to Bob to talk more about what we actually created and to then go into our demo environment to actually showcase that for you.
Thanks, Dave. Give me 1 second while we switch screens and make sure everything is set up here. You good to go? All right. So thank you all on the phone. We're going to go through a quick demo of the sensitivity analysis. I wanted to give a short overview of the platform for some of the people on the phone that aren't as familiar with the platform itself, or what we do or what can be done within the platform. It'll be quick, and hopefully then we can get into the fun stuff. So right now you're seeing this is our primary page. It's the Insights page looking at the Analyze tab. This is a demo environment. We have data loaded for this particular high impact question, HIQ, the likelihood that a student will enroll. Up top, you will see just a histogram visualization of the likelihood scores for the individuals in this set. And then below is all of the data that is available on those individuals. And you can see each individual has a likelihood score, and there's additional information like state, GPA, first name. There's hundreds and hundreds of variables that can be added to the platform here. Right now, I have this filtered on just prospects. So these are individuals at the top of the funnel. And what I wanted to do to demonstrate the sensitivity analysis is step through how it could be used at different phases of the enrollment process. So right now, we're looking at the top of the funnel prospects in this example. And one of the capabilities that we provide that's pretty unique is, as Dave mentioned, is the what-if analysis. So historically, any customer would be able to come in here, click on the what-if button, and then apply a change in a variable to all of the individuals that are filtered on that grid. So something as simple as some of those individuals have not received a view book. What if we decided to give them a view book? What would that do? And our system has the ability to play that what-if game and say, if we change that variable, what is the expected change in outcome? And you can see here that likelihood scores have gone up for these individuals, and we've given you the old score and the new score, as well as the difference between those two. In the histogram, that was updated as well, so you can see the shift in that distribution, and you can see the change in overall expected enrollment by taking this action. Now this is interesting and great. It can be very iterative. We had a number of customers say to us, they're always focused on answers, and you can extrapolate out if you're looking at all of these different what-if variables. There's a number of combinations that you could produce. So for them, every time their data updates, whether it's daily or weekly, to come in here and do those, all of those combinations was kind of onerous. So part of coming up with sensitivity analysis was coming up with a way to give you kind of that bird's eye view of all of the variables you can change and understanding what the outcome of that would be. So in this example, let's get out of this what if mode. If you have sensitivity activated within your customer platform tenant, you'll see this new button called sensitivity. You can click on that, and from here, you're able to configure a number of different sensitivity analysis configurations. I've defined a couple. We'll go through creating one at the end. I don't want to waste time on that because it's kind of boring. The output's fun stuff. So if we take those same prospects and we want to look at some of the marketing activities that we can control, this is the pre-configured configuration. It's been run. Let's just view the output. So what you'll see here is we loaded a new page. The functionality here is very similar to a pivot table. So on the left are all the variables that are available that you can use within the chart below. And then on the right, you can configure them how you want to actually see them in the chart. We set up defaults. All of this is templated so that we're trying to make it as easy as possible for you. So this is the default that we produce. The what-if variables wind up as the columns. The rows are all of the other variables minus the what-if and the delta score. For this, I like to actually remove the what-if score and just look at the deltas. So what you're seeing here below is for each individual that was in that prospect filtered set on the grid, we're showing you what their current ID is, what state they're from, what their initial likelihood score was before doing any what-ifs, and then using the two marketing activities. We had counselor visit and view book, what those currently are. And then over to the right is we're showing you the output of the deltas when we do the combinations of those what-ifs. So looking at this, we have what-if counselor visit, no and yes. And then below that, we have view book, no, yes, no, yes. So that means for the value shown in this cell, we are looking at this individual has not had a counselor visit and not received a view book. So most of the individuals in that prospective case were in that scenario, so their delta score is 0. It's that same 17% for this particular individual. Now, this is saying if we sent them a view book, what would the change be in their likelihood score? So we would see it would go up by 10%. And then we see that there are some cases where the combinations produce different outcomes. So in some cases, the likelihood scores improve. In most cases, they do. In some, it isn't as obvious. But throughout this, we color it so you can see overall at a high level where the most impact can be, and you can come up with a high-level strategy of who you want to target. So for some individuals, the counselor visit will have more of an impact than, say, sending a view book, or vice versa. And from this, you have a high-level view of that action or set of actions.
And it's interesting, Bob, I think when I think about application, right, just with some of the customers we work with today, on the marketing side, I think we help one of our customers sort of think through what combination of like an email and phone, sort of tactic would yield the optimal result. And we, outside of the platform, created a visualization like this that could help them. But that would be probably an example of where the marketing activity and combination of marketing activity could be used and then applied in a more tactical way.
Exactly. And then there's also the combination of aid and visits, where both to try to get to somebody to come on campus could be expensive, especially if you're looking to float some of the money to cover some of the costs. So there might be a trade-off between aid awarded and whether it's vouchers or reimbursement for travel expenses that you might be able to make in a much more clear way with this, or informed at least. So this is a simple example just looking at marketing. For the next case, if we pull back out of this and we change our focus to looking at these are admitted students in the state within 50 miles of the campus. We have another sensitivity configuration where we're just looking at visits by themselves. So there are two different visit types. There's a question of can we get those individuals to come to those visits, and if so, which ones would be better to get them to come to or more impactful? And this is the same type of view. So you're saying for each individual, we have that same outcome. In this scenario, there are some individuals that have actually come on a visit or two. So this individual has come on both. And although you can't take a visit away because they've already done it, we're showing what the impact of them actually coming on that visit was. So these negative values are showing that because this individual did come on both visits, they're effectively 20% more likely to enroll than if they didn't. And the same thing here, you can look through each individual, and all of this is exportable, so you can click export and take that spreadsheet and do whatever you want to it. The formatting stays. I'll show you an example with financial aid, and you can modify that, or you can send it to different teams. So we know that certain customers work in a kind of super user or analyst format where somebody would come in and do this type of analysis and then push this information to different departments or different groups within their organization. So the export functionality makes that a little easier. In other cases, you can give access to any user that you want to. It's within the administrative capabilities to give specific users certain access so that they can come in and run it themselves. So those are two high-level examples of how you can use it at the top end of the funnel as students are making their way through it. The one that we find the most usage is actually financial aid, and I think that's the one that most people get most excited over. I'm actually going to switch HIQs to a different data set that uses some historical data from our demo last year. So while that loads, what I've done here is created another view for us to look at. So these are in-state early action admits that I've filtered on. And what we're going to do here is try to figure out what is the best allocation of aid, or what are the impacts of allocating different amounts to aid to these individuals. So just like we saw before, we come into the sensitivity. I've already run it. We can click view. It will load. Now, one thing that you'll notice here is there's a couple of additional columns that we've included, and like you've seen with me clicking on some of these, they can be added or removed. They can be moved to anywhere you want. But the high-level view here, let's make this a little easier to see. We don't need CT, GPA at this point in time. You can see each individual, their EFC, the total aid that has been awarded at this point in time. So the demonstration here is these individuals were just admitted. We haven't determined how much aid we want to give them. We want to use the Othot platform to figure that out. So right now, all of these individuals have no aid allocated, and you want to try to determine what are the different impacts of providing different aid award amounts. So you can see their EFC, they've been awarded nothing, and then their current score. And then across the top, you're seeing different buckets of aid that you could award to them and the delta change in likelihood score. So for this first individual, you can see that giving them $0 up to $10,000 isn't going to have an impact on that 6%. But once you jump above that, you're going to see that their score is going to go up by 10%. So it would go from a 6 to a 16. And then you can see that it stays pretty flat across the top. The individual below them, there are a couple of steps that you can view. And because, as Dave mentioned earlier, we're doing this all at the individual level, all of these what-ifs or prescriptions are shown at the individual level. So they're all different. So when you're coming up with your award strategies, if you choose to, you could get down to the individual and give them specific award amounts or bind amounts based upon what their response would be to each one of those bucket types. Now, in addition to that, so this is something that could be used more tactical, right? When individuals are coming in, you're making decisions. It can also be used for budgeting and planning. So there's no requirement to actually look at the data at the individual level. So if we put back the SAT and GPA, we can now remove, well, let me also take away the data award. That's not necessary. And the base score. We can remove the unique ID and group all of these by these different aggregates. And we start to see something that looks like some of those matrices that you might be purchasing from other consultants, where we have groupings by GPA, SAT score, and effective family contribution. And now you're seeing that aggregated view of what aid can do. So from here, from a budgeting perspective, you can see for each one of these buckets, you can develop a strategy for next year on what to do, what aid values to apply. So in most of these cases, for this set of demonstration data, below $10,000, especially for the individuals that we're looking at here, doesn't really have much of an impact. The real value happens post $10,000, and then you can see for certain cases, the impact is little. For others, it can be much larger. And the other thing that point out, this is demonstration data. Everything that we build is not only done at the individual level, but is all with your data. So it's not a overall generalized model across many universities. It is based upon your historical information and your past financial aid strategies. So it is tailored to you. And then, like I mentioned, you can export this. So the formatting stays. This is the prior example I just showed. I hit the export button, and you have the spreadsheet here that has all of the information that we had within that view. And from this, you can do whatever you want with it, whether it's further add filtering, move things around, change the coloring, or provide it to different departments, like your financial aid department, and they can use it as an input when they're doing their awards.
And, you know, I think a couple of things that we've heard through both existing customers and prospective customers is, even at this point in the life cycle for this particular year, right, for a new customer even, there could be application around, you know, being a point of information into appeals making or an appeals process, right? It could actually, if we actually get a new customer up and running, could certainly be something that a scholarship committee uses as an input. And then, you know, our anticipation would be, as we head into the next cycle, we could work with a customer to actually create some of these award matrix views in such a way where we're beginning to help them to inform and shape award policy.
Exactly. And like I mentioned, all of this can be tailored to you in terms of the configuration. So what we showed here in the demonstration is very simplistic. We can also do combinations of different aid award types. So if there are multiple groupings that you have, it doesn't have to be a total sum. It could be multiple aid types. We could also add marketing activities or visits in there as well, as discussed before, so that you could look at what is the trade-off between trying to get somebody to come on campus, which might cost me $1,000, versus giving them another $1,000 in aid awarded. And the other thing that I wanted to cover was just to go over the configuration itself in a little more detail. We have a couple minutes, right? So this is the pre-configured one that I had created that we just viewed. If you're familiar with our program, we like to have you guys name and describe everything so that you have some semblance or understanding of what was created. So there's a name and description created by the user at the top. Then you get to choose which life cycle you want to include within the analysis. For this one, we looked at early action admits. And then the what ifs need to be selected. So what if scenarios need to be included within the analysis that you want to run. And this is configured on our end. So we template all of this, and I'll step through creating a new one to show you guys. And then once you've had that what if selected, we have pre-configured aggregates that you can choose to populate within the report. You notice here that I left two off. These are two visit types that we had included, but in this analysis, it didn't really matter, so I left them off so they didn't show up within the pivot chart. And then we always show the filters that were applied when this was run. So this is state, Tennessee, and lifecycle early action admit. So if we go back and we create a new one, it's the same fields, they're all just blank. If we go to create one, you can see here there's a drop down for the different life cycle you want to apply. This is the one that we did prior. These are pre-configured what ifs that we have. So you can see here we have total aid award, aid end visits, and then looking at two different visit types together. So if we did aid end visits, the aggregates are the same, and in this case we might want to add all of those aggregates just so that they would be incorporated in the pivot chart, and you would be able to include them as rows or columns. And then you just hit the submit button. That'll go off and run. It's showing that it's running. Most of these run pretty quickly. You can see the status changed complete. That only took a couple of seconds. Once you click on it again, you have the ability to click view, and it'll load. That's all I had for showing sensitivity.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Just a couple of comments, and then we'll open things up for questions. The first of which, just so people have a sense, like in terms of vision for the product, our anticipation is that we're going to take this a step further this year in such a way where we're actually going to be able to identify the optimal path for each individual student through an optimizer functionality. And in turn can help you to develop more sort of integrated strategies, right? Our orientation around doing that, though, is that we're actually going to look to work with some existing customers to ensure that we bring that to life in the best way, but that would be kind of a future state of what we'd be able to offer even above and beyond the sensitivity functionality. And then, the other thing that I just would sort of end with in terms of my comments is that we're really proud that we were able to actually bring something like this to market in a 3-month period, right? I think that's part of our wiring and trying to bring innovation into this marketplace. We've got a pretty robust product roadmap for this coming year that includes the optimizer functionality I've described, among other things. And part of how we're wired is to really partner and collaborate with customers in the marketplace to figure out how we can do things that are just fundamentally different and better than what's available today.
Great. Well, I was going to open the floor up for questions. So if any attendees have questions, feel free to submit through the questions panel. Dave, I was just going to flop back over to your screen unless we need to show other demos. Bear with me for a minute. And one of the questions was about the exporting function that you went over. It just said, can you export and share? So.
Yes, yeah. So for each one of those sensitivity analyses, once it has been completed, you've viewed it, you've constructed the chart to look the way that you want with the right columns and rows. You can click that export button in the upper right, and it will automatically create an XLSX file that's formatted that will download. And then from there, you can you can take that and do what you want.
Have fun in Excel.
Yeah, if you choose to.
Another question was about if the sensitivity analysis is static or dynamic. You were talking a little bit about the what ifs surrounding it. You talked about the customization, but how often can you change those variables?
So so every time you create a configuration, it uses the current data set that is available. So I don't know if anybody noticed, but I think in one of those configurations under predict set, there was a current and an old. So the one that said old, it was run on a previous version. So we have customers that are uploading data daily or weekly, and we want to make sure that once you run a sensitivity analysis, it's not going to change on you. So the data will be static in that form. The data will be static. The form can change. So you can go in and manipulate the rows and columns, but the underlying data won't change. So if you create something, export it, and share it, and somebody says, I don't want it in that way, can you go back and change it? You don't have to recreate it. You can just go back in and make those changes. Now, the next time a predict set is run, like in a week, if you wanted to run the same one over, currently you would have to create a new configuration to do that. With our next release, we'll have the ability to automatically update that with the new data. It'll be a button that you can click, but we haven't gotten there yet.
Cool. And then just another question was about data in terms of, how, what do you need? How, how much? How far going back? Just in terms of getting set up.
So everything that is the sensitivity analysis is built on uses all of the underlying data science technology that we have within the platform. So we have to meet the minimum bar for being able to produce good predictions, and that's in general 2 to 3 years of historical data. And then the variable set can be provided, but the minimum is usually 20. We can append a large number of variables based upon census and high school information that can make that more robust. But there's a key 20 variables that we would like to have. And then in terms of the value you can get out of it, comes down to how many what if variables you have data on. So what if variables meaning variables that you have the ability to actually change. So where somebody lives, like their state, you can't change that one. But things like marketing activities, getting them to come on visits, aid awards, like Dave mentioned, phone calls, direct mail pieces. If you have data on those can all become what if variables and be included within a sensitivity analysis configuration.
Cool. No other questions have come in. So with that, Dave, do you have any final comments?
No, just final comment. The question around how can Othot help? We've tried to really create a consultative way of engaging with customers. I think there are 3 fundamental ways that we can help today, especially as you think about whether predictive analytics solutions are sort of right for your institution. The first is inform. We've created a white paper around the 6 questions that you ought to ask before investing in a predictive analytics solution. Happy to share that. It's available on our website. The second is assess. We've actually created a analytics maturity assessment in collaboration with one of our partners in crime, Kennedy & Company, who I referenced earlier. You can actually go onto our website, complete a questionnaire, and we can come back to you with really an assessment around where you are from a maturity perspective. We're over time going to be looking to create benchmarking around that as we build up our database. And then the final piece is, as you look to evaluate new solutions, we've just given you, I think, a reasonable walkthrough of what our solution consists of and some of the more current innovation that we've brought into it as of January.
Great.
Well, I want to add one thing. So this was just launched, and I know some existing customers, if you're interested in playing around with it, we can configure it for kind of a demonstration purposes. So if you're interested in seeing it used on your data, contact customer success or support at Othot, and we can work with you to schedule configuring a couple of scenarios for you and having you play around with it so that you can kind of try it out.
Cool. Well, thank you both. This has been really informative, very exciting. Some of it was a little bit over my head, but as always, I learned a lot. And just to the attendees, thank you for attending. You're going to receive a follow-up email later today or tomorrow with a link to view today's recording. And as Dave mentioned, if you like the white paper or a link to the assessment, feel free just to reach out, and we'll make sure you get that information as soon as possible. Have a great day, and thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.